The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped between a credit card offer and an electric bill, like it was nothing. Like it wasn't about to change everything. Sarah Calloway stood at her kitchen counter in Portland, Oregon, still in her pajamas, coffee going cold beside her. The envelope had a Georgia return address, the law firm of Whitmore and Associates. She hadn't heard that name in 11 years, not since the last time she'd spoken to her mother. She opened it slowly. Her mother, Dorothy Calloway, had passed away on the 14th of October. Peacefully, the letter said, "At home. The house on Mercer Lane in Harlow, Georgia, the house Sarah had grown up in, had been left entirely to her. All she had to do was come down, sign the paperwork, and decide what to do with the property. Simple enough, except nothing about going back to Mercer Lane was ever going to be simple." Sarah hadn't spoken to her mother in over a decade. Their falling out was the kind that didn't have one clean reason. It was 100 small fractures that finally became one large break. She'd left Harlow at 22, packed everything she owned into a second-hand Civic, and never looked back. Or at least she'd tried not to. She booked a flight for Thursday. 1 bag, 2 nights max. Sign the papers, look at the house, put it on the market, and go home. That was the plan. It was a good plan. It just didn't survive contact with Mercer Lane. Harlow, Georgia hadn't changed much. That was the strange thing about small towns. They held their shape while everything around them shifted. The same gas station on Route 9, the same diner with the hand-painted pie sign, the same smell of pine and red clay that she'd spent years trying to forget. She picked up the keys from the attorney's office downtown. A quiet man named Gerald Whitmore, who spoke carefully, and looked at her the way people look at someone they feel sorry for. He told her the utilities were still active. He told her the house was in decent condition. He told her to call him if she had any questions. What he didn't tell her, what she would only discover later, was that he'd never actually been inside the house himself. Mercer Lane was a dead-end road about 4 miles outside of town. 7 houses widely spaced, surrounded by old Georgia pines. Her mother's house sat at the very end, a white 2-story with green shutters, a wraparound porch, and a mailbox that still read Calloway in faded black letters. Sarah parked in the driveway and sat in the rental car for a long moment. The house looked exactly the same. That bothered her more than she expected. She walked up the porch steps, slid the key into the lock, and pushed the door open. The smell hit her first. Not dust. Not the emptiness of a house long closed up. Something warmer. Something recent. Coffee. She stood in the doorway, every muscle in her body suddenly tense. The entryway looked the way she remembered. The same wooden floors. The same narrow table along the wall where her mother used to leave her purse and her keys. But there was something wrong about it. Something she couldn't name yet. She stepped inside. The living room was neat. Too neat for a house that had been sitting empty. The throw pillows on the couch were arranged carefully. There was a book on the side table, spine cracked, a folded piece of paper used as a bookmark, a half-melted candle on the mantel. Sarah's hand went to her phone. She almost called Whitmore right then, but something stopped her. Some old stubborn part of her that had grown up in this house and refused to be afraid of it. She walked slowly through the living room into the kitchen. The coffee maker had water in the reservoir. There was a single mug in the dish rack, clean, recently washed. And on the kitchen table, a chair was pulled out at an angle, like someone had just stood up from it. She searched the entire first floor, every room, every closet, nothing, no one. But the signs were everywhere once she started looking. A thin bar of soap in the downstairs bathroom, used down to a sliver. A folded blanket on the living room couch that was slightly warm to the touch. A small pile of paperback novels stacked neatly on the windowsill in her mother's sitting room. Books her mother would never have. Read thrillers, crime fiction. Dog-eared and worn. Someone had been living here, maybe for months, maybe longer. She almost left. She had the car keys in her hand. She was standing at the front door. That's when she noticed the photographs. Her mother had always kept family photos along the staircase wall. Sarah remembered them clearly. Her own school pictures, holiday photos, a few faded images of grandparents she'd barely known. She'd expected them to still be there. Maybe yellowed, maybe crooked, but they'd been rearranged, not removed. Rearranged, shifted around, and between them, slipped into the existing frames, tucked behind the glass, were new photos. Photos of her mother that Sarah had never seen. Her mother at what looked like a farmer's market. Her mother sitting on the porch. Her mother walking down Mercer Lane in the early morning light. All recent. All taken from a distance. All taken without her mother knowing. Sarah's hands were shaking when she called Whitmore. He answered on the second ring and listened without interrupting while she described what she'd found. The coffee maker, the blanket, the books, the photographs. There was a long silence on his end. Then he said something that turned Sarah's blood cold. He said, "Miss Calloway, your mother called our office 6 weeks before she passed. She said she thought someone had been in her house. We advised her to contact the police." A pause. "She told us she didn't want to. She said, and I'm reading from my notes here, she said she thought she knew who it was." Sarah stood in the middle of her mother's kitchen, phone pressed hard against her ear. "Did she say who?" Sarah asked. Another pause. She said it was someone who loved the house as much as she did. That night Sarah didn't leave. She didn't fully understand why. Maybe it was guilt, the weight of 11 years of silence pressing down on her in every room. Maybe it was something else, something that felt uncomfortably like the need to understand. She made up the guest room bed. She checked every window lock twice. She left the lights on in the hallway. At some time past 2 in the morning, she heard the back door open. Not forcefully, not like a break-in, carefully, quietly. The way someone opens a door when they're trying not to wake anyone up. The way someone opens a door when they think they're coming home. Sarah didn't move for what felt like a very long time. She heard footsteps in the kitchen below. Her slow, unhurried, the sound of the refrigerator opening and closing, the soft click of a cabinet door. She crept to the top of the stairs, phone in hand, 911 already dialed but not yet called. She looked down. Standing in the low light of the kitchen was a woman, older, gray-haired, small, in a way that made her seem fragile. but moved with a kind of quiet certainty. She was making tea. She had her back to Sarah. Sarah's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" The woman went still. Then, very slowly, she turned around. Her eyes were calm, not guilty, not afraid, just calm, and deeply, unmistakably sad. She said, "I wondered when you'd come." Her name was Miriam Cross. She was 67 years old. She had grown up 2 houses down on Mercer Lane, and she had been Dorothy Calloway's closest friend for the last 8 years of her life. She didn't offer excuses. She explained. After her own husband passed, Miriam had started spending more and more time at Dorothy's house, dinners, card games, long evenings on the porch. When Dorothy's health began to decline, Miriam had started coming every day, cooking, cleaning, sitting with her so she wouldn't be alone. After Dorothy died, Miriam said she just hadn't been able to stop coming. "It felt like her still," Miriam said quietly. "This house felt like her." Sarah sat across the kitchen table from this woman she'd never met. This woman who had been with her mother at the end when Sarah hadn't been, and she didn't know whether to feel grateful or devastated. Maybe both. Maybe that was the answer. Miriam reached into the pocket of her cardigan and set something on the table between them. A small envelope. Sarah's name written on the front in handwriting she recognized immediately. Her mother's handwriting. She wrote it about a month before she passed, Miriam said. She told me to give it to you when you came. She said she knew you'd come eventually. A small, tired smile. She always said that. Sarah held the envelope for a long time before she opened it. The letter inside was short. 3 paragraphs. Her mother had never been a woman of many words. The first paragraph said she was sorry for the distance, for the stubbornness, for the 100 small things that had built the wall between them. The second paragraph said she hoped Sarah would keep the house, that it was meant for her, that it had always been waiting. The third paragraph was just 4 sentences. "I want you to know that I watched you grow up in these walls, and I want you to know that I was proud of you every single day, even the days I didn't say so. The house on Mercer Lane holds everything I never knew how to tell you. I hope you find it all." Sarah Calloway did not put the house on the market. She flew back to Portland, gave notice at her apartment, packed what mattered, and drove south. Miriam Cross still comes by on Tuesday evenings. They eat dinner on the porch sometimes in the Georgia dusk, surrounded by pine trees that have stood longer than either of them have been alive. It's not the reunion Sarah expected. It's not neat or simple or resolved. But the house on Mercer Lane is full again. And somehow, in the way that matters most, so is she.